You can keep our wilderness wild. Remember to leave no trace. Pack out all waste, including compostable food scraps. Stick to designated trails and don't disturb wildlife. Always take photos from a safe distance. A grouchy grizzly makes a poor selfie companion. Let's all do our part to respect our natural spaces. To learn more about how you can preserve your favorite places, visit leavenotrace.ca today.
Sports 1440 in West Edmonton Mall and Wetaskiwin. CKJR is a Stingray radio station.
Download the free radio player app and listen wherever you go.
I'm walking around the streets, took every day not to call ya, was the time it had to be. Hey, love, well, I don't fault ya. With the weeks, closing my tracks when I'm not outside.
This is Hoop City with Paul Sir on Sports 1440.
They do have a timeout. Decide not to use it. Curry, way downtown. What a shot from Curry! We did it!
Here's your host, Paul Sir.
Welcome, everybody, to Hoop City on this very nice Saturday morning. It's a bit overcast in Edmonton right now, but it beats the heck out of snow on the ground, Josh. So I'm excited about a great, great show today with so much to talk about. And Josh, how are you doing?
I'm just living the dream, Paul. Better now that you're here.
Oh, my gosh, you sweet-talking fool, you.
That's me.
We have a great show today. As I mentioned, we have Pat Boylan, the voice of the Indiana Fever. He also is the voice of the Indiana Pacers. But isn't it great to be able to have Pat on talking about the return of Caitlin Clark, the reassembled Indiana Fever lineup, the Toronto Tempo having Canada's first regular season game last night. Unfortunate loss, but they played really well against Washington. So we have WNBA basketball in Canada officially now, and the season kicks off today with a very compelling matchup between the Caitlin Clark-led Indiana Fever and the Paige Beckers-led Dallas Wings. So we're going to have a great conversation with Pat. Really looking forward to that. Have our good friend Ben Golliver back on doing the deep dive today, and man, do we have a lot to talk about with the playoffs. Now, we pre-recorded yesterday afternoon, so we didn't have the results, obviously, of the Knicks and Spurs wins last night, but the talk itself about the other series and just about the NBA in general, I think you're really going to enjoy. And also this weekend, in fact, at 1:30 this afternoon over at the Expo Center in Hall D, the CEBL season is going to start with the Edmonton Stingers squaring off against the Winnipeg Sea Bears. And that, again, is at 1:30. And Doug McLean, the voice of the Stingers, will be with us to talk about them. Doug won't be on the play-by-play call today. Our good friend Mark Majot will be, however, because this is a CBC nationally broadcast game, the inaugural broadcast on CBC of the CEBL. And Doug's going to come on the show. We're going to talk about the Stingers, about the new lineup, about the league. So that'll be at the top of the hour. You can text us at 833-401-1440 if you have any ideas, thoughts, questions, observations about the playoffs. We welcome any and all of your messages. So that's our number again, 833-401-1440. So without further ado, Josh, we have a ton to talk about. Let's go to your 3-pointers.
Yeah, all right. So 3 from deep. Number 1, Victor Wembanyama last night made history as he is the 4th player in NBA playoff history to record 35-plus points, 15-plus rebounds, and 5-plus blocks in a game. If you throw in his 3 3-pointers that he made, that makes him the only player in NBA history to have a stat line as such. I think Wemby has figured out the Wolves defense.
You think? Yeah, I think you're right. He has figured it out. It did rattle him certainly in game 1, Less so in game 2, although he still, to your point, Josh, he really wasn't himself in game 2. But last night he was himself, and in fact, let me put it this way: he was too much of himself for the Timberwolves because he has figured them out. The fact that he can step out and hit the three in the way that he does when Rudy Gobert is guarding him, that's problematic because Rudy, outside of the key, has limitations defensively. And when you have Wemby out front, you really have a guy who plays like he's 6'5", only he's 7'5". So yeah, he's figured it out. It was a magnificent game by Rudy Gobert, a very strong performance by the young San Antonio Spurs. The Wolves were certainly better than their abysmal game 2 performance in San Antonio. And it was a fun game to watch, to be honest. It went right down to the wire. The score spread really wasn't indicative of the kind of game that it was. Now, having said that, the Wolves were always battling back throughout the evening. Anthony Edwards was very good. Julius Randle, I think the Spurs have done a fantastic job of identifying what Randle's tendencies are, which is throw the ball away when he tries to become too much of a playmaker. But Wolves had a better performance. The pressure will be on when they play again tomorrow night to try to find a way to win and go back to San Antonio tied 2-2. But Wemby and the Spurs appear to be in a really good place.
Yeah, that was the Spurs' first win in Minnesota in 4 years.
Wow. And Minnesota competed well. I mean, they did really well against the Spurs this year. I think they were 3-1 against the Spurs this year. And so the Spurs in the playoffs with that very, very young roster they're performing extremely well.
And credit to Anthony Edwards. I think at the end of the first period or first quarter, my God, the hockey is seeping in.
Guys.
Yeah, I know it's getting there. I believe. Okay, here it is. I have it right here from the Minnesota Timberwolves. Minnesota ended the first quarter on a 19-5 run. Anthony Edwards had scored the last 12 Timberwolves points. He hyperextended his knee like a week ago. He's been unreal. He's looking down Victor Wembanyama one-on-one and stepping back and draining threes on him. Like I'm so impressed with Anthony Edwards this series.
I am too. I agree with you. What impresses me the most outside of just the basketball play on the court, to your point, Josh, is the fact that he wants to be on the court where the stereotype of NBA players is that they don't want to play hurt. Because as I understand it, he actually has a hyperextended knee and is battling runner's knee on his other knee. He has two knees that are problematic, but he's playing more within himself and playing more of a diverse game. So I think what you have from Anthony Edwards is a noble effort and a team-leading effort, and I think he's trying really hard to find a way to lead the Timberwolves back to a victory, and he fought hard last night. It'll be interesting to see how Coach Chris Finch from the Wolves is able to adjust and to see if they can disrupt what now could be very daunting in seeing Wembanyama play the way he did. By the way, I have to give a shout-out to a member of the San Antonio Spurs staff who was mentioned the other night by Doris Burke as saying that he's probably going to be getting some head coaching offers this upcoming off season, and that's Sean Sweeney. Sean played at Cretin-Derham Hall with my son Steve, and Sean went on to play Division I basketball, then finished his career in Division III, got into the NBA bloodstream, was with Jason Kidd for a long, long time, is now the associate head coach of the Spurs, and he is on the fast track to being a head coach. He's the guy who's devising the defense that's bothering Rudy Gobert so much, bothering the Timberwolves. So you have to give Sean Sweeney kudos. I coached Sean with some shooting. I don't want to take any credit for anything, but Sean, he and his family were good friends of ours, and we're really excited for Sean. And nobody works harder than Sean Sweeney in the NBA. The guy's just 18-hour-a-day, 7-day-a-week guy, and he gets it done.
That's awesome. Let's move over to number 2 here. We're not seeing a lot of players put their best foot forward this playoffs. However, we have seen a lot of playoff risers up to this point. Io DeSomu comes to mind, Jaden McDaniels. Cade Cunningham has leveled his game up quite a bit. However, to me, the player that has risen the most in this playoffs is the New York Knicks former Raptor legend OG Anunoby.
That's a good observation, Josh. Kudos to you. You won't see OG with the highest per game scoring average, but he's averaging 22 a game. Mm-hmm. So he's no slouch. He can score, and he has upped his offensive game. He's always been an elite defender, but that defense is even better than it's ever been in his illustrious career, both with the Raptors and now with the Knicks. I always felt it was too bad that the Raptors felt they had to get rid of OG because the potential is being, I think, fulfilled. And I have to give Mike Brown credit. Kudos to Mike Brown for what he's been able to do with the New York Knicks. When you look back to last year with Tom Thibodeau and the way he would run his starters into the ground, Brown has been much more creative with the use of his lineup and also to free up, I think, the offensive capabilities of players not named Jalen Brunson. And OG is one of those. So I think that's a great observation. I would also like to acknowledge what you just said about Cade Cunningham, because Cunningham has been the rock in the rock fights that the Pistons are having with the Cavaliers. And that this guy is one tough competitor. The way he controls the game. And in my conversation with Ben Golliver, we touch on this, but one thing I'd share with you, Josh, is this the observation. What I love about Cunningham is the way he emotes on the court. He is not prone to doing what so many NBA players do that drives old guys like me out of our minds, where they celebrate every little thing that they accomplish during the course of a game, like it's the game-winning shot in Game 7, with the over-exuberance, etc. Cunningham's very stoic. He's very steady. He plays extremely hard on every play, and he's developed his offensive game to complement a very tough defensive game as well. I love watching Cade Cunningham play, and I love the way he galvanizes this Detroit lineup that 2 years ago could hardly win a game. It's an amazing turnaround. You have to give credit to J.B. Bickerstaff, their head coach, but you also, I really think, have to give a shout out to Cade Cunningham and the outstanding NBA player that he's become.
Yeah, he's really been a fun watch, like a really, really fun watch, especially in that first round. He's playing with like a flak jacket under his jersey because of his collapsed lung. Yeah. And then they go down 3-1. You're like, wow, man. And then he starts averaging 38 a game and like 9 assists. You're, oh, never mind. Like Cade Cunningham, I forgot he was in the MVP conversation this year before his lung collapsed.
Deservedly. Before his lung collapsed. We're not talking about tweaking something. You have a collapsed lung, which in some respects is a little more dramatic than it may be, but it's nothing to be fooled with. So Cade Cunningham, he's one of the great players that's emerging as a real star in the league.
Yeah, but going back to my original point of OG, so this year, you shouted out Mike Brown for not like running the starters into the ground and being creative. So this year, OG Anunoby is averaging 4 less minutes than he did in last year's playoff run. He's taking 1 less shot, roughly, and he's shooting about 20% better from the field and 20% better from 3. And his free throw numbers are still the same, but he's averaging 5 more points. Like he's doing this insanely efficiently like he's taking less threes. So that's good. That's probably why he's shooting 54% from 3-point land. But he just gets it done on the other side of the ball. Like I love watching OG.
He's a dog on defense, and dog is meant in the most complimentary way. You're absolutely right, Josh.
You even have the opposing coach who, to be fair, was his former head coach being like, yeah, well, I remember when I came in and OG was just hanging out with Kawhi Leonard literally all the time, just trying to figure out what he could be. And that was sort of like the comp that people started to give him because Toronto fans are insane and we just want everything. It was like, oh, well, he's the next Kawhi. He's the next Kawhi. This is the closest he'll like anyone's ever been to the next Kawhi, is this insane 3-and-D career that he's had up to this point, and now being able to score at all three levels efficiently and consistently.
Well, and I think, too, that goes back to the point about the way that the offense runs now, is that it's not Tom Thibodeau's style of just put the ball in Brunson's hands and start setting screens for him and let Jalen go to work. Everybody else standing around watching. They've become much more of a ball movement team, not so dependent on Brunson. And the benefit is the efficiency you just described for not just OG Anunoby, but for Brunson himself, because he doesn't have to dribble the ball to death for entire possessions to try to find a way to score. Cat is more involved. And what I really think is helping the Knicks so much are the other players like Hart and Bridges are more involved on the offensive end too. They're not just spectators. That when you're getting touches on offense, you're going to be better on defense. That always follows. If you're just out there and you're a pylon waiting for a pass from a ball-dominant point guard that you may or may not get, you really have a tendency to become less efficient on offense. So OG is benefiting from that. I'm so glad you shared those statistics because the efficiency that you just described is off the charts. But knowing where you're going to get the shots and knowing that your coach wants you to get those shots are difference makers. So kudos to OG Anunoby. Hopefully his injury isn't too serious. The Knicks are on a roll right now, and the Knicks, I think, if OG is healthy, are the favorites in the East to get to the NBA Finals.
Without a doubt. So going over to number 3, the WNBA season kicked off last night, and we saw the Toronto Tempo play their first ever game. It was a 68-65 loss to the Washington Mystics. My main takeaway from the game is that this year, Marina Mabrey will be an all-star. Way too early prediction, but that's where I'm at.
Mabrey's a really good player. We'll see over the course of the season if your prediction is correct, but does she have all-star, all WNBA, all-star potential? 100%. She's a player. She has attitude, she has swagger, but she has game to match it up. And to have that kind of leadership on an expansion team is invaluable in a coach trying to establish a team's culture. The Tempo were fun to watch. They definitely were. For a first game, and the WNBA is such an anomaly. This afternoon, I mentioned in my opening remarks, Josh, that the CEBL kicks off. One of the aspects of the CEBL is they have a very short training camp window to get your team ready. That involves players coming in staggered times. WNBA isn't unlike that. It's really quite similar. They have more time than a week, but not much more. When you think the rookies, like Rice last night from UCLA, she was playing the national championship game about a month ago in the NCAA. So it's a real quick turnaround. And to see the quality of play like we saw last night in the first very exciting game in Toronto was really great to see. And to your point, Mabrey's going to be, she's such a nice addition, such a great team leader, and she wants to take the tough shot. And she has the ability and the mindset and the confidence and believes when she takes that tough shot that the ball's going to go through the basket.
She's got that Dion Waiters mentality. I'd rather go
Dion Waiters? My gosh, where did you come up with that?
So Dion Waiters had this quote. It said, I'd rather go 0 for 30 than 0 for 9 because that means I didn't lose confidence shooting.
Yeah, that's like Patrick Ewing's comment about the salaries in the NBA, where he said, we have to make a lot of money because we spend a lot of money. So I mean, with Waiters, I'm just going to keep chucking. I don't really care. The 3 letters that mattered most to me are F, G, and A, not just FG.
Yeah.
So, but it's a valid comparison.
Yeah.
She wants the ball. I would liken it more to Bird and Jordan and guys like that wanted the ball in their hands. Dion Waiters isn't the first guy that would jump to mind for me.
Yeah. The one other thing I want to touch on is Kia Nurse last night. She only plays 10 minutes. She only gets 1 shot. I would have just it's your home opener, your inaugural game. I would have liked to see Kia Nurse on the floor, maybe a little more. I know it was a close game. but we're talking about a veteran here, hometown kid. I think that just like that gets the crowd a little more into it, that like your hometown player is playing something down the stretch. And I think crowd energy really helps affect home teams.
I agree. Well, number one, you're 100% right that crowd energy does affect oftentimes positively the home team. That's for sure. But I think what's going to be interesting to watch through this season is Kia Nurse the locker room leader, the hometown figurehead, kind of like is Kia to the Tempo what RJ is to the Raptors, only Kia's role will be reduced. This will be interesting. My own personal observation is Kia is definitely on the downside of her career.
Yep.
Kia has a very diverse career, and I would go so far as to say really hard to work on your game when you're doing a lot of other things that she does very well. And so I agree with you, but there's a reason she wasn't on the court, because right now maybe she has an injury that's tweaked, but my guess is it's more Kia's looked to be a role player that has been brought in because of her Canadian connections and her leadership capabilities, which are very, very strong. So your point's well taken, but there's a reason, probably, certainly in the coach's eye, why they didn't have her on the court at crunch time last night.
Yeah, hey, no, can't argue with that.
So we're going to take a break right now. When we come back, and by the way, I'm really excited about the music we're playing today. It's going to be an Earth, Wind, and Fire weekend. So that's what we're going to be playing for the rest of our show. And when we come back, we're going to have the first segment of my deep dive conversation with Ben Golliver yesterday. And we, as always, go into the weeds about what's happening in the NBA. It's a great conversation. Looking forward to sharing it with you. And I'm very grateful that you're with us today here on Hoop City with Paul Sir, Josh Fenwick, on your sports leader, Sports 1440.
Sports 1440, Edmonton's sports leader, welcomes you to the basketball show.
They do have a timeout.
If you're without personal health insurance benefits from your employer and are self-employed or retiring, contact Innovative Benefits. Innovative Benefits helps break down personal health plans to put you in the driver's seat and reduce your net cost. They'll help identify the best plan for you and your family so you can pay for what you do use and look how to reduce what you don't use. Don't be left out in the cold. Understand all your options with Innovative Benefits. For more information, visit innovativebenefits.ca today.
The weather doesn't care about your shift or your schedule. Carhartt Rain Defender sweatshirts let you battle back against the ever-changing elements. Carhartt's durable, water-repellent technology lets light rain beat up and roll right off. Layer up and stay on the job longer without getting drenched. Get your Carhartt Rain Defender sweatshirts at all three of our Edmonton job site workwear locations.
Job site, workwear, tough different jobs.
Saturday mornings live on Sports 1440, powered by Subaru, a top safety pick for unmatched peace of mind. Visit Subaru.ca.
Hey, it's Jamie from Green Drop Lawn Care, exploring Edmonton from the Science Center to Horlock Park. I see your lawns and cringe a little. Weeds are here. And you've got them, Edmonton. Take your lawn back with our guaranteed lawn care programs and unlimited weed control.
Green Drop has been Canada's lawn expert since 1979. And they're in your community, keeping your yard looking beautiful with affordable lawn care packages that include fertilizer, weed control, drought fighter, and more. Visit greendrop.com.
From post-surgery rehabilitation to palliative and hospice care, Heart to Care Home Care provides professional medical support in your home. Compassionate care focused on comfort and dignity. A preferred vendor with FSCD, AHS, and WCB. HeartToCare.ca.
Do you have a loved one struggling with addiction? PEP Society is here to help. It could be your child, your brother or sister, a parent or a friend. No matter who it is, if someone you care about has an addiction that is affecting your life, there is help for you too. PEP Society recognizes that recovery is a family journey. They offer support groups to family and friends where you can learn coping skills, find resources, and talk to people who understand what you're going through. PEP's focus is empowering families and caregivers of a loved one struggling with addiction to step into health and recovery. You can find their support groups online, in person, in the Edmonton area and Red Deer, or over the phone with their free support line. Remember, you're not alone. Support is available for you too. To learn more, go to pepsociety.ca. That's PEP society.ca. Or call 1-877-991-2737.
Start your day with a blast of sports. Kevin Carius, along with Brandon Douglas, brings the fire, the fun, and the fearless takes. Weekdays, 7 to 11. Text Kevin, 883-401-1440. Mornings with Sports 1440. This is Hoop City with Paul Sir on Sports 1440.
They do have a timeout. Decide not to use it. Curry, way downtown. Bang! Bang! Oh, what a shot from Curry! We did it!
Here's your host, Paul Sir.
Welcome to the Deep Dive. This is Paul Sir. Happy to be joined by my good friend Ben Golliver as we go into the weeds together on all that's going on in the NBA playoffs and much more. Ben, welcome back.
It's great to be back. I love this round. You know, it's not as many different series as the first round, which can kind of feel overwhelming. I think a lot of times we get kind of classic second round series. You know, I'm thinking of like Nuggets Thunder, thinking of Nuggets Timberwolves, you know, from some past years. You just get some good ones. And then you still have enough games, though, so it's not like the conference finals where if you get a dud, the whole night is ruined. You know, at least you get like a backup option every night here if there's a blowout, right?
Well, absolutely. And we've had some compelling series off to a start. I'm going to start with your Lakers. Not that I would use the term compelling so much, but a bit surprising, even though they've lost both games by double digits. I don't think it's exactly what people would have expected. Do you, Ben?
Well, I think the Lakers have a few things they could take away. First of all, LeBron's playing pretty well. I thought he had a really good game one and a good game two. And then they were able to shake off the tough game one loss and really get a nice bounce back from Austin Reeves. And so they can at least say, hey, we're getting, you know, good contributions from our stars. To me, the story has been on the other side with Oklahoma City because, you know, during the regular season, they never felt like they had the championship hangover, right? They start off 24-1. They have all these different injury issues. And you start to think, wow, this is just a machine. These guys are robots. They're not human. They don't have feelings like the rest of us. They could just win. And you get into this playoffs. I thought game one might have been like a D performance by the Thunder, and they still almost won by 20, especially Shea was probably the biggest surprise how much he struggled. And then I thought they were okay. You know, I give them a C or a C plus for game two, but again, they basically win by 20 points. And it feels like they're just kind of waiting until the second half to flip the switch, and they know they're better, and they feel like very confident. I wonder, you know, they're still undefeated. So, you know, this is all nitpicking, right? Picking nits, but in the playoffs, they're undefeated. But I just don't feel like we've seen their A game yet, where we really had to see them pushed and tested. And I wonder if they are going to advance to this Western Conference Finals and they get San Antonio, who they struggled with during the regular season, is that going to be culture shock, right? Where it's like you're going 0 to 60. You're just kind of coasted along through these first couple of series, and then all of a sudden you're really into the thick of it. Now, you know, Minnesota could still win, and that would be a rematch for Oklahoma City, but I think that would be a physically taxing and difficult matchup for OKC as well. So either way, we know tougher times are coming for OKC. And I guess what I'm looking for here as the series comes back to Los Angeles for games 3 and 4, are they going to have a statement game where they just run the Lakers off the court from start to finish and they tell everybody, hey, we're totally undefeatable and we're not a defending champion to mess with and we're not taking things lightly? That's what I want to see from the Thunder side.
How much of what you just described in terms of being a bit surprised in the first two games and the way the Thunder have played, how much credit would you give to the Lakers?
Well, I think JJ Redick is a really sharp coach. If he's not elite, he's very close to it. you see it with his defensive schemes on the opposing star players. It's like Şengün looked atrocious in the first round. And I give a lot of credit to the Lakers' defensive schemes and their ability to implement them on the fly and stick to them. And so what they're doing is they're showing a lot of doubles to Shea, right? They're trying to turn him more into a passer. They're using Marcus Smart, who is a good individual defensive player, on him. And it's not super complicated stuff, but they're sticking to it and they're kind of making Shea work more so than he had to in the first round series against Phoenix. So I do give the Lakers defense some credit. At the same time, Shea just kind of seems, I don't know if he's in a funk. He doesn't seem quite right. There's shots that he's missing that he would normally make. He had some super careless turnovers in game one, and they had a long wait because they swept in the first round. So maybe there was some rust involved, but it was just, silly stuff that kind of reminds you of the worst of James Harden. That's not what we think of when we think of Shea Gilgeous-Alexander in terms of taking care of the basketball, right? And so I want to see him, take a step up. I think he can play a lot better than he's shown in this series. And I think if they're going to beat San Antonio or Minnesota, he's going to have to play a lot better than he has so far against the Lakers. But the Lakers had a huge talent disadvantage, a huge depth disadvantage. They've got a lot of older legs compared to the Thunder. And so when I saw the press conference not too long ago where Luka was saying, hey, the doctors told me 8 weeks. And so he's essentially trying to preemptively pour cold water on any idea of a possible return in this series, I kind of figured, well, the Lakers know the deal. They're not as good as the Thunder across the board. This is probably going to be a sweep or 5 games. They don't want people to get the wrong idea that like there's going to be a miracle return that saves everything, and they're just going to take their lumps a little bit. And I think that's largely what we've seen through these first 2 games, even though, at times the games were more competitive than the final score indicated.
Well, they certainly were through 3 quarters. I thought that was, I thought the Lakers kind of hung around unexpectedly. Shea has not looked like himself, both in terms of his play, Ben, but also in terms of what I think you were alluding to in terms of his emotions. Yeah. You're like, he looks unsettled right now. A couple of thoughts I had, and I'll relate Shea's play to Wemby's play offensively, because I think people are going, wow, I mean, what's wrong with Wemby? He's not getting 35 and having his way. I think what we're dealing with right now is something called playoff defense, where you're playing somebody game in and game out. You're playing consecutively. Adjustments and nuances can be made. And even as great and versatile as Shea is, he still has tendencies. And what the Lakers are trying to do is take away the comfort zone on some of those tendencies. Certainly the Wolves are trying to muscle, beat up, and push Wemby out of his comfort zone. And to a certain extent, it's working. But I think what people often forget when they start going, oh, this is really weird. What's wrong with them? Nothing's wrong with them. It's what's right with the other team. And this is what everybody has to adjust to when you're in the playoffs. Because one thing about being the defending champion, A, you got a target on your back, and B, everybody wants to do their very best against you, and C, you are, after all, only human.
Well, it's a great point. I still think Shea can play better than he's shown. He can definitely shoot better than he's shown. He can take care of the ball better, but he is getting tested in a big time way. He had that famous line earlier this season about, I don't know what the question's going to be on the test, but I've got all the answers at my disposal, essentially, right? It's like whatever they're going to throw at me, eventually I'm going to figure it out. What's been so impressive about Oklahoma City is that Shea hasn't had to be the answer in the first 2 games, right? Because they're a true team. Same thing goes for San Antonio with Wemby that you're talking about. The balanced scoring is the key to playoff defenses keying on your stars, right? Having the second, third, fourth, fifth scorer, the guy who comes in off the bench who can score. Chet Holmgren, big gold star for him so far in this series, and really against Phoenix as well, because he had a very favorable matchup there. He's been a great source of offense. AJ Mitchell stepping up. He's had some down moments in this playoffs where it gets me a little uncomfortable. Is he trying to do too much? But then again, he has some up moments where you're like, we didn't even know they had guys from Belgium who could play this well. This is like he's trailblazing. He's breaking new ground. So they've had a lot of different guys step up, and of course, you always count on their defense to be there for Oklahoma City. On the Wemby point, I love it. I would only add, it reminds me, how many times did we ever check the box score with Tim Duncan and say, oh, Duncan didn't have 30 points tonight? No one ever did that. If you did that, you're a moron. It's like
as they are now.
Yeah, his impact with Duncan, it's like if he has 6 assists and 12 rebounds and 3 blocks and his plus minus is probably plus 20, on any given game. Like, he had a good impact. It didn't matter how many points he scored. And with Wemby, it starts with his defense, of course, right? But also, to me, it's all about that scoring balance. And in game 2, every Spur felt like they were grooving. You go right down the list, and didn't Vassell hit a three-pointer without even coming back to the ground? It was like a midair three-pointer in the corner. You had De'Aaron Fox, unlocking some stuff after some struggles in game 1. Castle is really coming to his own as a physical presence. Harper looks wise beyond his years, even though he's only 20. I mean, everybody was having success. That is success for Wemby. If he has 20 and all the other starters have between 15 and 20, you're not going to beat the San Antonio Spurs. That's going to be basically impossible. It's all about that team dynamic. And so, that's why when we're analyzing these playoff matchups, a lot of times these days I look towards depth and balance almost before I look to star power, because nobody's going to outsell LeBron when it comes to jerseys. But if he doesn't have 4 other guys he can trust with the ball in their hands and the game on the line, they're not going to go very far. And unfortunately, we're seeing a lot of the Lakers role players exposed in that series.
It's a G League roster behind LeBron and Austin and Rui and, certainly Marcus. I mean, they've earned that. They've earned a lot of respect. And it's not like you don't respect the other players, but they're just not that good. And when you compare, like you said, the quality of roster, it's just a very different level. I'll go to the check.
Well,
Go ahead.
I had one Laker guy tell me, hey, if the Thunder aren't even going to play Aaron Wiggins and he gets a DMP, can we just give him a yellow jersey and he can come over to this side?
Get the pennies out. We're bringing Wiggins over.
Yeah, exactly right. It's like it's an embarrassment of riches for Oklahoma City, and the Lakers are saying, hey, we don't have Luka who's making like $50 million. Of course we don't have enough depth. Give us some help,
That's so true. Let's talk about the Jekyll and Hyde Timberwolves. The Wolves, they gutted out an ugly win in game 1. They made it ugly and, played in some respects pretty darn well. Certainly made San Antonio uncomfortable, but San Antonio, they were close to winning it. Could have won it just as easily as losing it. Then the complete reversal of fortunes in game 2. The Wolves, people are going, the Wolves, what's wrong with them? Well, nothing's wrong with them per se. I mean, it was an awful game. That's how they were all year. They were schizophrenic all year. They would look great one night and then play somebody awful like Washington and just stink it up. And they look like they're 5 steps too slow. And they were just dreadful. They were discombobulated. They went back to that selfish me ball. Like they did everything badly. Do you think the Wolves have something they can tap back into? I mean, DeSunmo's been out a few games. Edwards is still not himself. He's still adjusting to, being, playing at 70%. But do you think the Wolves can get back some of that competitiveness with the Minnesota crowd behind them?
Oh, yeah.
They're not going to be awful, but do you think they have enough to win 1 or 2 in Minnesota?
Well, I'm glad you started with their kind of duds, because I say when they lay eggs, it's like dinosaur-sized eggs. They're going for the biggest ones you can. Yeah, exactly. The biggest ones you can imagine. So I looked this up. I think over the last 4 postseasons for Minnesota, they've had 7 losses by more than 20 points. So this is just a part of the deal. And the oldest cliche in the book is like, it doesn't matter if you lose by 1 or lose by 50. And I think Minnesota is like, we are going to try to prove that cliche true until you guys believe it.
Cliche. That's who they made it up about. Right. It didn't exist before the Timberwolves.
That's right. It's the Timberwolves corollary is what we're going to call that. So, I think that going home is going to be great. They got this split. That's what really matters, right? If you're going to try to pull an upset, you got to get a split. And then you got to protect home court. I came into this series favoring San Antonio, and I actually feel stronger about San Antonio than I did at the start of the series, even though they dropped game 1. The main reason why is Ant-Man has been limited, and I think what San Antonio has figured out is if we dare Julius Randle to go one-on-one and to try to be the hero and let him take all the clutch time shots because Ant gets tired or Ant is limited by his injury, and we can just dodge guys like Mike Conley hitting a whole bunch of threes like he did in game 1, they're not going to be able to score enough to beat San Antonio. I think that's kind of the game plan. We saw Oklahoma City use a very similar blueprint, right? It's like, all right, well, Randall, We don't trust your ability to take care of the ball, and we don't think you're an efficient enough scorer. So go nuts, and we'll live with it. And you saw that late in game one. San Antonio made that big comeback in the final 4 minutes, and the ball was in Randall's hands almost the entire time. And he wasn't horrible, but it was, just barely enough to kind of stave them off. And then in game two, Randall had a whole bunch of turnovers, inefficient scoring, and San Antonio blows them off the map. So I think San Antonio is deeper, more versatile, healthier, and I think all those things really matter.
What about digital advertising?
Yeah, we do that.
Connected TV?
We do that.
Search and social?
And that.
Programmatic? Digital out of home?
We do it all. Endless digital platforms to connect your business to more customers, to intrigue them, engage them, so they choose your product or service.
Back to Hoops.
Get started now at stingraymediasolutions.com and let us help your business grow.
To Hoops.
We are Stingray. That's what we do.
Legacy Heating and Cooling jingle auditions take one for Gene Principe. Hey, thanks for being on time.
I'm always punctual. Now, how about some cool beats while I drop the heat?
Ready when you are.
Call Legacy. Call Legacy.
Nice.
Boom! I'm a musical genius.
Legacy's going to love this for AC season.
What's not to love with no interest and no Principe payments for 1 year?
Are you always like this?
Yep. Unlike Legacy, I never know when to cool it.
Legacy Heating and Cooling.
The weather doesn't care about your shift or your schedule. Carhartt Rain Defender sweatshirts let you battle back against the ever-changing elements. Carhartt's durable, water-repellent technology lets light rain beat up and roll right off. Layer up and stay on the job longer without getting drenched. Get your Carhartt Rain Defender sweatshirts at all 3 of our Edmonton job site workwear locations.
Job site workwear, tough different job.
Saturday mornings live on Sports 1440. Powered by Subaru. Built for real-life confidence. Visit Subaru.ca.
Take the pain out of airport parking with Park to Go. Your first-class parking experience. Book self-serve and valet parking and save up to 30%. Book now with promo code RADIO. That's RADIO.
Did you hear that? What about that? When people you know and love are dealing with mental health issues, sometimes their call for help goes unheard, like a silent scream. But there is something you can do by reaching out to someone who might be silently suffering. Because connecting can be a powerful antidote, and your love and support could make all the difference and be the connection they need.
Smart, connected, community-driven. Jason Greger sets the standard for sports talk in Edmonton. Join the conversation on Sports 1440. Text Greger, 833-401-1440. Sports 1440, where Edmonton talks sports. This is Hoop City with Paul Sir on Sports 1440.
They do have a timeout. Decide not to use it. Curry, way downtown. Bang! Bang! Oh, what a shot from Curry! We did it!
Here's your host, Paul Sir.
Welcome back to Hoop City with Paul Sir. I am pleased to be joined by Pat Boylan again from the Indiana Pacers, as we all know him, but now his other gig, which is as the voice of the Indiana Fever, who are about to start their new season today, actually. And Pat, thanks so much for making some time to speak with us.
Of course. Good to be with you and excited to tip off what should be a historic 2026 WNBA season here today for the Fever.
Well, let's talk about that historic, because that's not just a platitude that you're throwing out that doesn't have very real content attached to it. It was such a colorful off season. That's one descriptor I think I could use. But what a season of controversy, of upset, of all kinds of discussions going on a variety of levels. But it ended up with a very progressive contract for the players. They've seen their compensation go up dramatically. And what do you feel like the vibe is not just within the Fever organization, Pat, but also within the league in general?
Well, as it relates to the contracts, first of all, it's kind of a stunning change, really, because I'm not sure. Maybe you could find another example going way back into the history of all the sports leagues. Usually when you say ever and you talk about sports, you can find a comparison. But you've got a scenario where the players in the 2026 WNBA season that are on minimum contracts are making more money than Supermax players were just last season. So the bottom of the roster is now making more money than the top of the roster less than 365 days ago. And the top of the roster is going from making less than 300,000 US, of course, dollars to as much as 1.4 million. I saw a remarkable nugget that Kelsey Mitchell, who signed for the Supermax with the Fever at 1.4 million this year, is going to make more this season than her previous 8 years in the WNBA combined. So it is an absolutely stunning jump in terms of pay, first and foremost. I think they took a lot of steps in the right direction, including developmental contracts. So this is something that the players have been clamoring for quite some time. For so long, you talked about the WNBA being a league of 144, 12 teams, 12 roster spots. But we're seeing expansion, of course, and into Canada. And we're also seeing roster expansion. So now you're at 15 teams, and teams can keep up to 14 players. I'm not a math wizard. I don't have my calculator in front of me. I'm not sure exactly what that number looks like, but it's more than 144. So that's good, too. And, going into this year, the spotlight is always, as has been since 2024 when the Fever drafted Caitlin Clark, the spotlight is massively on the state of Indiana, the city of Indianapolis, and this franchise. And when you consider the fan base here, the local fan base especially, when you're talking about the Fever, you're almost talking to two different subsets of people. You're talking about the people in Indianapolis and the people in the state of Indiana that are fans of their local team, as anybody would. But the Fever had become such a national brand that there's also fans all over the country and all over the globe. It's really a global brand. So if you just look here locally, of the fans that would probably also call themselves Pacers fans, and you think about what the last however many months have looked like. I was just adding this up yesterday. It was kind of depressing. The Pacers and Fever have played a combined 121 games without Tyrese Halliburton or Caitlin Clark taking the floor. Those are our city's two biggest stars. So to have that streak ending here on Saturday is one that fans in this area are thrilled, of course, to be seeing. And then nationally, Caitlin just has such a massive fan base that I think you felt this anticipation build up. And in fact, worry is too strong, but I am a little bit concerned of the fact that this feels like opening day feels like a playoff game. It always has so much attention anyway, the first game in any sports league. But Caitlin Clark has not played since early mid-July. And it's been almost 10 months since she's taken the floor. And if things go really well, it'll be great. If you don't look great on opening day, plenty of good teams don't look great. This is just the first iteration of 44 of these. There probably needs to be a realization that no team is at their best here in game number one. But the anticipation level is kind of hard to describe just because it's been so long since we have seen those signature Caitlin Clark moments. And hopefully Saturday, from a Fever broadcaster perspective, goes well. And if it doesn't, I'm going to be quickly counting the days until game number 2 on May 13th, because I'm sure there will be plenty of rational discourse going on in those 4 days. So excited very much to get the season tipped off and underway. And, I'm biased. I'm a biased guest and I'm a glass half full guest. But I just have this sneaky feeling that this season is going to go well. If you're a believer in karma, it kind of feels like things are going to go maybe swing the other direction in a good way here for the Fever. And they clearly need Caitlin Clark healthy. She'll be out there game number 1 and hopefully for all 44-plus playoffs.
Pat, there have been some naysayers about the WNBA, even as much about the WNBA agreement. And I think it was about 10 days ago, I saw one of the sports pundits in the country talking about the difficulty that Indiana was having in selling out the arena because of the the ticket prices, which they claimed were apparently much higher than they were last year. Is that true, or is it a sellout? Certainly the excitement and the vibe is there, but are the people going to fill the stadium as well?
I don't know exactly what the ticket numbers look like, to be honest with you. But we are absolutely expecting a sellout here on Saturday. I did see one post, and I'm not sure if this is what you're referencing or if it was somewhere else. I saw it like a few weeks ago where somebody said, look at all the open seats at Gainbridge Fieldhouse. But when you go on Ticketmaster, the default setting is to show resale tickets as well. So and if you take the resale tab off, then there weren't many seats left. In fact, I checked it yesterday, and it wasn't yet a sellout, but the seats that were available were all in the upper corners of the balcony. And if you click resale, anybody can resell their tickets. That doesn't mean that there won't be people in those seats. So I think anticipation level is close to an all-time high. And there's a marketing side of things. It's frankly way over my head. I'm already dissing my own math abilities here twice in the first 5 minutes. I'm not sure what that says about me, but I don't understand.
We'll have to get in touch with your elementary school math teacher, Pat.
I'm really good with calculators if I've got one in front of me, and that's about it. But I don't understand. There's of course a business side to all of this, and frankly, for many, many years, not to go down this rabbit hole too far, but for many, many years, the Simons, who are wonderful people and dedicated and passionate owners, took a loss on the Fever for many, many, many years, but because they believed in the product, and B, believed that maybe one day something like this could happen. I don't think anybody imagined this in their wildest dreams. So I will tell you, they asked me, for example, right when I started not when I started, but when Caitlin Clark got here, I should say, if I was okay moving from my broadcast position from the floor to the club level. And I said, first of all, I can't even believe you're asking me this and not just doing it, but I appreciate the thought. And B, absolutely, please do it. If you can sell these 4 seats at a premium, you guys, nobody has been more bought into the WNBA over the last 2 decades than the Simon family. So, I'm sure there is kind of a push and a pull with the levers on exactly how to price things the right way from a business standpoint, but also to be accessible to the fans. But assuming your audience here will be tuning in the not too distant future to our game, you're going to see a full building on Saturday. That's for sure.
I'm talking to Pat Boylan, the voice of the Indiana Fever. They get started this afternoon against Dallas. Now, this is an interesting matchup. You talk about Caitlin's coming back. Of course, everybody is excited. In fact, everybody who has any kind of knowledge about the basketball world in general is familiar with the fact that Caitlin Clark missed a great deal of the season last year. There was all the controversy swirling around at a variety of levels about Caitlin and her impact on the league, some of the controversy around players and how they responded to Caitlin's impact on the league. But now we're getting back to basketball. Let's talk about this matchup between Dallas and Indiana. And of course, 2 Midwestern girls, Caitlin Clark from Iowa and Paige Beckers from Hopkins, Minnesota. They're the stars of their teams, and in many respects, 2 of the big stars in the league itself. What do you think what do you look for this matchup in the game?
First of all, there are just so many aspects of a matchup like this that I love. One of those being, we know that Caitlin Clark is the megastar and the major needle mover. I've had this conversation on your show before. I don't need to rehash it in detail. The WNBA for a long time has seen strong and steady growth year over year. I can give you plenty of examples of how the league has grown from my first year in 2015 to 2023. But Caitlin Clark's emergence has turbocharged, and the league is seeing growth that has been pushed decades forward, in my opinion, solely from the emergence of Caitlin Clark. But for the league's health and continued growth, it cannot be all on her shoulders. And don't get me wrong, there are plenty of stars. I mean, Asia Wilson might go down as the best player in the history of the WNBA when she retires. Brianna Stewart is a wonderful talent for the New York Liberty. Sabrina Ionescu has a lot of those talents and capabilities that Caitlin Clark has. But Caitlin Clark is the big needle mover. And as the sport continues to grow, I don't know if this is an apples to apples comparison, but you look at the NBA and you think about the fact that, the NBA has a almost 50-year head start on the WNBA. And when did the NBA really start to take off? In the 80s with Magic and Bird. And of course, here locally, Larry Bird means a whole lot to people here. He's from Indiana. And that really turbocharged the NBA into the 90s and Michael Jordan. We know the story. There needs to be more household name stars in this league. And in my opinion, the most popular player in the WNBA is undoubtedly Caitlin Clark. I think the second most popular player in the WNBA is Paige Beckers. And if there was an Aces fan listening to this, they might take offense to that. I mean none of it. Again, I just said I think Asia Wilson will probably go down as the greatest WNBA player of all time, and she has a tremendous fan base. But we're talking, in my opinion, about another tier that is starting to be reached in the WNBA, which is household names coming out of college with major fan bases. Beckers is not at Clark's level, but I think it's at a level that in the non-Caitlin Clark world, we are seeing for the first time. So that's really exciting to me. I'm hopeful that you're going to have 15 years of Caitlin Clark and Paige Beckers going back and forth and each winning multiple championships and multiple MVP awards. And I think we have more coming down the pike. I think Juju Watkins is going to be another great example of that. So as it relates to the game here on Saturday, I almost think it's a perfect opener because my hope is that it's a small sample and a microcosm of what's going to be a much larger storyline, which is going to continue to lift the WNBA up of these two mega stars. And by the way, you're talking about the last 4 number 1 overall picks that are going to hit the floor on Saturday, including Aaliyah Boston, who's a great young center, 3-time All-Star in her 3 years, and AZ Fudd, who had a tremendous standout year at UConn as well. So you're going to see some of the top young talent in this league. Clark and Beckers are the headliners, but Boston and Fudd, and for Indiana, Kelsey Mitchell, and for Dallas, Arike Agumbawala. I mean, there's a ton of talent on the floor here tomorrow, and I think it's a great way to get this game and to get this season started. And if you're Indiana and you have contention aspirations, which they absolutely should, it's just one of 44, but I think Dallas is going to be a good team, so I think it's a really good early test for the Fever.
I get goosebumps just listening to you describe it like that, Pat, and it makes me even more excited to watch the game tomorrow because you've outlined and you've showcased exactly what's going on in the league so very well. You mentioned Bird and Magic. You add, of course, Michael Jordan into the mix, but it transcends just NBA basketball, as we know. You look at the impact of Tiger Woods on golf. It's inexplicable. There's a lot of other great golfers. There's a lot of other great personalities, but once in a while, for a whole bunch of reasons, and a lot of them are hard to quantify, somebody just is it, and it's transformational. And that has been Caitlin Clark. But now start adding the improving breadth of talent that's coming into your league, the star quality of certain players, as you mentioned correctly with Paige. Leah is a charming individual, very, very well spoken when she does broadcasting.
When the changes, you'll hear it first. Download the TuneIn app to listen or search news on TuneIn to stay in the know.
The Lawnmower Hospital.
Spring is here, and your lawn knows it. Get the professional grade cut your home deserves with Toro. The Lawnmower Hospital has the right Toro for the job, from the residential Toro Super Recycler to the high-performance zero-turn tractor for those larger properties. Shop now for exclusive spring discounts or 0% financing for 36 months on select units. Beat the rush and get your Toro in for service today. Visit lawnmowerhosp.com.
The Lawnmower Hospital.
Saturday mornings live on Sports 1440, powered by Subaru. Safety, reliability, and uncommon value. Visit Subaru.ca.
Calling all golfers. The 8th annual Angels Anonymous Charity Golf Tournament will be held on May 22nd at the Ranch Golf and Country Club. Angels Anonymous is a national nonprofit organization that has been helping grant wishes for terminally ill adults for over 20 years. And this tournament is a literal driver for funding towards this great cause. This is your opportunity to have fun and make a difference for those in need. Visit angelsanonymous.org and click on the News and Events tab for more information.
Sports 1440 in West Edmonton Mall and Wetaskiwin. CKJR is a Stingray radio station.
Download the free radio player app and listen wherever you go.
This is Hoop City with Paul Sir on Sports 1440.
They do have a timeout. Decide not to use it. Curry, way downtown. Bang! Bang! Oh, what a shot from Curry! We did it!
Here's your host, Paul Sir.
Welcome back live to Hoop City. Paul Sir here with Josh Fenwick on this great Saturday morning. And one of the reasons that Saturday is a great day this year in the city of Edmonton is it's the start of the new CEBL season, the 8th rendition of the CEBL season. And I'd like to welcome to our program a guy that I have worked with for many, many years, doing the play-by-play with the Stingers. I won't be with the team this year, but I love to have Doug McLean in this morning to talk about the start of the Stinger season. Doug, how are you today?
I'm good, Paul. How are you?
I don't have Doug's sound. He's there now? Okay.
Now are we good? Can you hear me now?
I can hear you now, Doug.
There
How
we
are
go.
you?
I'm good. How are you?
Doing great. Doing great. I'm excited about the CEBL season. I know there were a lot of changes in the management and the head office of the CEBL this year. There have been a lot of changes around the league, of course, but this is a new Stingers team, isn't it, Doug? Pretty much there are returners. Let's first talk about who's back from last year, and then we'll start talking about some of the new players that have been brought in.
Yeah, a handful of guys is back. Nick Hornsby, everyone will, Stinger fans will know him going into his fourth season with the team. Mason Borsey, who joined the team kind of early on in the season a year ago and jumped into the starting lineup. He'll be back. Tay Donald, a former U Sports player, now playing professionally, has played overseas, now back again with the Stingers. And then Aaron Rooms, who had another outstanding season with Toronto Metropolitan University in U Sports. He has graduated, now back with the Stingers again for this season. And then Mike Nuga as well with the club. Has been a couple times now with the Stingers, joined again partway through last season, and he's back. Nuga and Hornsby will not be there today, will not be with the team quite yet. I know I heard you talking earlier about the WNBA and the CEBL being somewhat similar in that sense in terms of players wrapping up their pro seasons elsewhere and then jumping into these other leagues. And so that'll affect Nuga and Hornsby, but Borsey, Donald, and Rooms all back. Saw them at practice earlier this week, and they'll be in the lineup today.
When you were at practice, Doug, what did you see? What struck you about the composition of this new batch of players?
They're a little bigger. I think they've added a little bit more size throughout the lineup. Isaac Jack being the one player, 6'11", played under Dave Smart at Pacific this past year. So he's going to he's young, of course, just having finished his NCAA career, but he certainly brings some size throughout the lineup in those, in the 3s and 4s. I think they've got some size too. So that's going to change things maybe a little bit from where they've been in the past. I mean, you and I have watched Jordan Baker coach for a few years now, and certainly a player that loves to, I'd say, think defense first. I think that's going to be an emphasis again this year. I mean, saw them working this week on just really trying to make sure that they're pressing the ball all over the floor, limit transition opportunities. I think they're going to use their size and length to support that a little bit as well. So that's the one thing that stands out. I'm not sure they have any what we might call pure and true scores. So I think the scoring side of things is going to have to come through how they play defensively, and it's going to have to be spread throughout the lineup. Not saying that's going to be a challenge. I think they've got players that can put the ball in the basket, but I think that maybe unlike what we've seen in the past with the Sean Easts of the world, or back in the day, the Xavier Moons of the world, where you've got a base of offense you can lean on. I don't know that they have that, but we've also seen, you and I have seen over the years too, where players come in and you don't know that they're going to be able to bring that kind of offensive level, and it elevates and kind of, I won't say comes out of nowhere, but it kind of does. So we'll see if that manifests itself too. But that's the one thing I think it could be, I'll call it a bit of a challenge, is where the true scoring is going to come from for this club.
They went deep into the G League this year, Doug, didn't they? To acquire a lot of their talent and a lot of the length that you're just describing. It seems like the G League is such an ideal match for the CEBL, because as opposed to playing overseas, which affect players like Hornsby and Nuga, and their season's not ending for a while, that going to the G League, whose season ends about 3 or 4 weeks ago, this is a great way to go. And the Stingers seem to really have bought into that this year.
Yeah, and we've seen that in the last couple of years. I think that's a great point, that we've seen a lot more G League connections with the CEBL over the last 2 or 3 seasons, and players coming in across the league. And for, I think, partly the reasons exactly that you state, it's a good opportunity for them to continue their seasons. They can play up here. It leads well into future G League seasons, or if they decide to go and play in Europe or Asia or elsewhere, they can do that. So Trey King, Dane Janth, I should say, are going to be 2 of the players that, again, bring some size to the group, 6'7", 6'8". So they're going to be those, 3s and 4s that can provide a little bit of a different dynamic, I think, to maybe what we saw last year with the Stingers. King put up about 9 points, 5 rebounds a game in his final year at Iowa State. Then last year with Austin in the G League, a little over 7 points a game, shot 39% from 3. So a player that's going to, again, bring a little bit of outside presence and can, I think, be a player that can help bring the pace up a bit. Janth is, again, at 6'7", 6'8", somewhere in that range. Played at Illinois and Memphis in his NCAA career, so some prominent NCAA programs. And then last year was Sioux Falls in the G League, a little over 14 points a game, just under 6 rebounds a game. So again, players that I think can probably be versatile, similar to the way we've seen Nick Hornsby be versatile in that lineup. And I think that's going to help the Stingers. And again, the fact that it's so tough, again, you spoke about it earlier on your show, the fact that, it's a week, maybe week and a half that these players have together to try to figure out how to get going. And you've coached, that's not an easy thing to do, to sort of throw players out on the floor. And they're all skilled players. You can't just sort of drop players out on the floor and say, go, and magically it's all going to click and work. And so I think having some players that are versatile, that bring some size, but can play some different roles, I think that's really important early in a season, because it allows you to kind of figure out your team a little bit, you're able to move guys in and out of spots maybe a little bit more easily. So we'll see if that comes to fruition. But I think the versatility potential that exists in this lineup, I think, is a nice bonus early in the year for Coach Jordan Baker.
I'm talking with Doug MacLean. He's the voice of the Edmonton Stingers on the CBC Gem broadcast for this year. He's also the voice of the University of Alberta Golden Bears and Pandas as well. And he joins us here on Hoop City with Paul Sir. Doug, there's 2, you mentioned the young man that played for Dave Smart. And for people who don't know who Dave Smart is, he's the greatest Canadian men's coach of all time, winning, I believe, 13 or 14 national championships at Carleton, and now is coaching at Pacific University down in California. And one of his bigs are here with the Stingers. There's also a young man from Indiana State who are coming right out of the NCAA. Now, we've seen over the years players come from very good NCAA programs, but the CEBL it's not the same as the NCAA, is it? And there really is a learning curve for a lot of these young guys.
Yeah, absolutely. And Samaj Teal, the player that you're talking about, who played at Indiana State and then split his pro season this year between Israel and Finland. So has a little bit of pro experience, but to your point, not a lot. And
right.
I was talking to one of the Stingers assistant coaches this week, Eric Fawcett, and he talked about that. He said the fact that, to some degree, these players come in and it's not an easy jump. It's you sort of think, I'm going to come in. I played at the NCAA. I played at big schools. It's going to be no problem. You'll be able to step in and off we go. And that's not always the case. I mean, it's an elevated level of play. You've got older players, veteran players that have played professionally around the world. Some have played in the NBA, some have played in the G League. So there's lots of experience there. And I think it takes some time. I think a good example of that is a player we saw last year, the Stingers, who's now playing with Brampton, is in Keon Ambrose Hilton, a player that lots of size, had a good NCAA career. And I'm not putting words, I'm not saying he thought it was easy. I'm just using him as a good example of a player that it took him some time to figure it out. And he really had a strong second half of the year. And it just takes time to get into the swing of being a professional. And I heard when I was at practice this week, them talking about the fact that, guys, this is your job. This is a job now. It's different. It's, you're coming in, you're coming to work every day, and you got to understand what that means in terms of how you prepare during the morning, during the afternoon, coming to practice, what you're doing after practice, all those little things. And not to say they don't do that at the college level, but it's different. You're getting paid to do this now. So it's a very different world. Yeah, I know there's NIL money, but not for everybody. But, it's a different world now. And so I think that message is trying to get put into some of these players, because it's just not an easy jump to say, hey, now I went from the NCAA. It's great, great system. And now I'm going to play pro. And it's just going to be a next step up in what I do. But it's a learning curve for sure.
It's a learning curve. And it's exciting that Canada has a now well-established professional basketball league that have put its roots down. We're in the 8th year. We're going to get to a new owner that has bought into the league in a little bit. But let's talk about the opponents for the Stingers this afternoon. They're going to be playing against the Winnipeg Sea Bears. Winnipeg has one of the great organizations in the CEBL. I think that's pretty widely acclaimed, actually, that the Asper family that owns the Sea Bears has done a great job in Winnipeg. They have the largest crowds in Winnipeg. Now, one of the signings that Winnipeg made in the offseason, which I think was to the surprise of a lot of Stingers fans, was Xavier Moon, the great player for Edmonton that led Edmonton to their championships. So is Xavier with the team, or is he still playing overseas as well? My
understanding is he won't play today. So he will not be in the lineup today. Not sure when he'll join the team.
Right.
And yeah, absolutely. I think it was a huge surprise. I mean, not only did Xavier Moon win 3 MVPs, win 2 titles with the Stingers, I mean, he was really in many ways the face of not just this franchise, but the league.
The league.
Player that went on to play with the LA Clippers, had some success with the Clippers in the stints that he had down there. Has been playing in Russia a little bit. And we've seen him. He's been back to Edmonton multiple times over the course of the last few years. And so there are great ties clearly between the franchise and him and the city and him. And so to see him go to Winnipeg, a bit of a surprise, and don't know all the backstory to how that came about. But I mean, regardless, if you look at the league as a whole, I think having him back in the league is a great thing. I think they might need 3 or 4 basketballs on the floor to navigate him and Teddy Allen and Davian Warren, another former Stinger that we saw a couple of years ago who liked the ball in his hands too. Isaiah Osborne, a former Stinger too, playing for Winnipeg. So that's going to be the most interesting thing, is how do you navigate that? Xavier Moon, a player that can certainly succeed and I think can enjoy being a distributor, but I don't think that's when he's at his best. I think he's at his best when the ball's in his hands. He's making decisions. Is he taking the ball himself, putting shots up? Is he getting the ball to his teammates? I don't know how that's going to work with Teddy Allen, so we'll see. But lots of good talent on that Winnipeg team. And to your point, I think they've definitely been, since they've come into the league, they've had great success on and off the floor. They haven't been able to quite get over the top. They hosted championship weekend last year, lost in a semifinal to Calgary. So they haven't quite gotten there yet, and they've got a lot of talent, but we all know you can put all the talent together. It doesn't mean you got a great roster. It doesn't necessarily mean you have a great team. We'll get a sense of that already today if that lineup can start to build to be one of the true contenders in the CBL this year.
Doug McLean talking with me. Doug is the voice of the Edmonton Stingers, also the Golden Bears and Pandas at the University of Alberta, here on Hoop City with Paul Sir. Doug, what's the vibe that you're hearing about what could be the crowd today in the opening day for the Edmonton Stingers in the CEBL season?
Yeah, good question. I mean, not a ton of buzz, I wouldn't say, and it's hard to know if that's good or bad. I mean, we've seen, the crowds have been relatively consistent. The Stingers have done a good job with that. I know they had a season ticket holder event back earlier this week to thank and welcome their season ticket holder group to this year. And And so I think, again, we know people love basketball in this community. The Stingers have been well supported. I think the fact that they've continued to try to do things over the off season in the community, be visible as best as possible, I think is a positive. So it might take a bit of time. Again, sort of word of mouth starts to ramp up a little bit once the season gets going and you continue to see the crowds go, but we'll see. I mean, it's going to be a good team. They've had good success here, new players. So that can be a bit challenging in terms of how you don't have the Sean Easts of the world coming back that you can lean on in terms of how you publicize your group, but they're going to be a fun team to watch. I think that goes without saying. And I think the crowd will be good today. And I think it'll continue to ramp up as the season goes on.
Couldn't agree with you more. I am curious to see, I'm going to shine a spotlight on Aaron Rooms because he has had consecutive phenomenal seasons in youth sports. And now with him graduating, year older, a year wiser, with the experience behind him of, I think it's the last 2 seasons, correct? With the Stingers as a developmental player, last year as a full-time roster player.
That's right. Yeah, this will be his 3rd year. Yeah.
So, I mean, what an advantage for a young man. I mean, we know Aaron has the body of a professional athlete, 6'6", big, strong, athletic guy. I'm really curious to see what his development will be like in terms of his ability to be a real impact player for the Stingers in their main rotation.
I completely agree. I think we saw him even 2 years ago in that first season that he was with the Stingers. There was a fair amount of confidence shown in Aaron Rooms. And I think they believed pretty early on in what he was able to do. And like you said, he's got strong body, not the tallest, but he's got a good, strong center of gravity. I think allows him to do lots of different things. I think he's been a good shooter. He's one of the better shooters for the Stingers a year ago. And so that versatility inside and out is an advantage to him. I think the thing for him that I'm going to watch for is because, again, he's not going to be able to be a guy that can play a ton of minutes in the paint. He just doesn't have that kind of true size to be down there. But if he's a guy that can continue to work on his quickness and just add that little half step that's going to allow him to beat guys off the dribble, to get up the floor a little bit quicker, I think that's going to give him a real advantage because he has such a strong body. If you have to start matching up smaller players to deal with it a little bit more quickness, he's going to overpower them just because of the physical presence that I think he can bring. So I think he's a really important player for this group. Tay Donald, I think, is as well, another former U Sports player. So I think watching those two and how they continue to develop, and hey, good on the Stingers for identifying these guys and bringing them back and continue to see that development both in the offseason and how they develop with this club. And yeah, I think Rooms is a big, important part of this roster going forward.
The only University of Alberta player that I saw is they have one kid from the university, and I'm sorry I don't have my screen up right now. Is it
Kyle Varner? Yeah,
Varner.
Kyle Varner's been there. Yeah.
Talk about Varner's season with the Golden Bears and how you think his style of play and strengths and weaknesses will translate over to the Stingers.
I thought it was a tough year for Kyle Varner to some degree, especially the first half of the year. And it's not uncommon. We've seen that with players who have good first seasons. They come in and the second year is just a little bit tougher. And I think it's, and not to put myself in their heads, I think there's a sense of, okay, I'm going to elevate this year and I have a sense of what that's going to look like. And I think sometimes it just isn't as easy. You've got some film on players. You have a sense of what they can do, what their tendencies are, what they like. And I think for Varner, it was a bit of feast and famine, some really, really good nights, and then he'd kind of go quiet. And they just didn't have enough offensive depth for that to happen. They needed to lean on him. But I thought as the year went on, last quarter of the year, I thought he was much steadier. So night to night, Friday, Saturday, just much better, much more consistent. He has a great shot, incredibly quick release. Saw it even this week at practice. Like, he gets it off fast. And I think his teammates were a bit surprised even just how quickly they got to close on him to get out. Same thing, I think, similar to Rooms. I think maybe not, he doesn't have the same size as Rooms, but a player that if he can add a little bit more quickness to his game, I think he'll be a little bit more effective, because I think he's a guy that, plays he can play not inside, but he can bring you down to the post a little bit. Use the size he's got. If he adds a little bit more to his frame, I think that'll make a difference too. But a player that I think projects more to be certainly at this level a 2, maybe a 3, and so with that, building a little bit more quickness, because he just again doesn't have the true size to be a guy that can go at bigger players all that easily. But that quick shot he's got, that's you can't teach that. I mean, he just has it, and he can knock him down, and he's got some confidence. You can see it this week even playing. I mean, he's not going to play a ton, I don't think, but might get some spot minutes here and there if he's in the lineup, and he's got some confidence, and having that little bit of that swagger can, but not an arrogant way, but I think he can bring that, and that'll serve him well too.
Well, and you need to have swagger. You need to have confidence, as we know, Doug, to be successful at this level when you're competing against athletes of this caliber. And it's great for a young man like this to get that experience, to go through the ups and downs of a professional experience, the knocks that you're going to take. You're only going to get better and stronger for it. And it's one of the nice, I think, smart parts of the CEBL, that it's dedicated to the development of Canadian athletes in this manner. Okay, so Doug, let's get to let's go to entertainment tonight. Mark Cuban is now an owner, and I have to be honest with you, Doug, when I saw the announcement, I go, that's got to be AI. It's like reading that some celebrities died today, and you find out, well, that's not the truth. It's just some AI bot trying to get your attention. So I thought, Cuban, no way is this even possible. But it is. Mark Cuban is at least part owner of Brampton. And so tell me what your initial thoughts are about this highest of high-profile people with the pockets that are as deep as about you can get coming into the CEBL. It's going to be interesting because we've had other quote-unquote celebrity sightings where a lot of hype has been built around them, and then it just kind of fizzles out. This feels a little bit different, at least initially out of the gate.
Yeah, I agree. And I think it's sort of early days on it. It's hard to know what it'll actually turn into. And yes. Brampton, a team that made some aggressive moves over the offseason. We mentioned Ambrose Hilton and Sean East joining that team as well. And I think they're trying to build, a club that can attract top-end talent to play in the summer. And I think adding a part owner like Mark Cuban won't necessarily hurt that cause.
I think that'll hurt it.
No. Now, you have to be able to deliver, because again, if you're going to say, hey, we're going to build this program, we want to be able to develop players that we want you to come in, play here, learn, and go on to top-end international teams, play in the G League, hey, maybe someday play in the NBA. Like, you make those promises, you got to find a way to deliver that and make sure that, yes, you're building a strong program that starts from the beginning and builds up. We'll see where they go. It's early days in CBL. And like we've been saying, with any team in this league, it's hard to know who's what and who's where and how it's going to play out. But they certainly made some investments on the player front this year. And, Cuban isn't going to hurt. I mean, he's a guy that obviously turned to Dallas Mavericks franchise that was maybe, to put it nicely, not in the upper echelon of NBA franchises, once after they joined the league in the early 80s. And when he came in much later on, built them into a team that ultimately won an NBA title and I think became a team that did lots of good things on and off the court. And it's an interesting move. And I think it shows too where this league has gone. I think this league has drawn the attention of not just players, but other people in the basketball world. And that alone, I think, is good. How hands-on he'll be, I don't know. My sense of him and all his stuff is that he's tended to like to be hands-on. Maybe he will be, maybe he won't. But I think it's a good message in terms of, I think, of where the league has gotten to. People now recognize this as a pretty viable, strong league in terms of the talent, in terms of what is producing. And again, you bring names like that in, that's a good thing. To me, it's got to be for the long haul. If he's in and then he's out again in a year, that's the worst kind of situation. So hopefully he's in for the long haul, because then you really start to see the message that this league is stable, this league is going somewhere, and then you start to attract players, investors, et cetera, who want to be part of it. So a good thing. It's just you want to see it last over some time.
I think you summarized it beautifully, Doug, because as you say, if this is another flash in the pan, in and out, it's not only not a positive, it's actually a negative, as you described very well. But it certainly gets feathers ruffled. It gets people's attention. We'll see if and when Cuban shows up for a game. I'm sure he will. It sounds like he's in, and it sounds like he has some pretty good relationships, and that the reason he invested is because of the relationships with past staffers at the Mavericks. So he's got relationships, and that means business and friendships that have drawn it to it. So it's definitely an out of the blue, unexpected addition to the CEBL this season. That's for sure. But coming back to the matter at hand, we've got the CEBL starting today here in Edmonton, the first national broadcast. Our good friend Mark Majot will be the sideline reporter on the CBC national broadcast. We're excited for Mark. And more than that, we're excited for the basketball fans in Edmonton to be able to go and watch professional basketball down at Hall D at the Edmonton Expo Center. And I believe it kicks off at 1:30. Correct, Doug?
I believe you are correct. Yeah, exactly.
Well, Doug McLean, it's been a pleasure having you on. Again, as always, thank you for your time. I wish you all success this year on the broadcast, and we'll have you back in real soon as the season gets going.
Happy to join anytime, and great to be on with you today. Have a good rest of the weekend.
Okay, thank you, Doug. Doug McLean, voice of the Edmonton Stingers, of the Pandas and Bears over at the University of Alberta, joining us here on Hoop City with Paul Sir. We're going to take a break right now. When we come back, we're going to have part 2 of the deep dive with Ben Golliver here on your sports leader, Sports 1440.
Own and run a small business? Innovative Benefits provides private health service plan setup, as well as administration services for businesses like yours. But the best part is, Innovative Benefits offers benefit plans that cost less than the industry average, 20 to 40% less. And they provide 100% coverage with no insurance company rules, administration, or interference. So if you have medical, dental, or healthcare expenses, their plans will always increase your cash flow. Visit innovativebenefits.ca for more.
Millions and millions of Canadians do not have a doctor. We have a crisis. Canada's Medical Clinic is opening clinics across Canada to allow everyone to have a doctor to call their own. Early detection saves lives. We've got some great news. You can call now and book an appointment with your new doctor. Canada'sMedicalClinic.com. And more good news. Canada's Medical Clinic Windermere is also now a walk-in clinic. We'll see you there.
Contractors, spring cleanup is coming. It's time to get your lawnmowers, aerators, power rakes, lawn vacs, and more serviced at the Lawnmower Hospital. Hey, the longer you wait, the longer you'll have to wait in line later. Their service department gets crazy busy as the season rolls on, so get in now while it's calm. For quick service on top brands like Bluebird, Ryan Turf, Husqvarna, and more, check out lawnmowerhospital.com.
The Lawnmower Hospital.
Saturday mornings live on Sports 1440. Powered by Subaru. The perfect choice for Alberta's challenging weather and road conditions. Visit Subaru.ca.
From the first face-off to the final whistle, Sports 1440 is your home for hockey talk. With live coverage, expert analysis, and pre- and post-game shows, we bring you closer to the game. Tune in 24/7, only on Sports 1440, Edmonton's sports station.
This is Hoop City with Paul Sir on Sports 1440.
They do have a timeout. Decide not to use it. Curry, way downtown. Bang! Bang! Oh, what a shot from Curry! We did it!
Here's your host, Paul Sir.
They are. And to a large extent, I'm really happy for the Knicks because I think they have, and by they, I mean the players. I think they've bought into this. I think they've been trying. I think they flailed away a bit under Tibbs. Glowering, I always love that term. I always say, he looks like he's in a Dickens novel. You just have those big stovetop hats and a scarf and glower at people on the street corner. But I think Mike Brown has been really good for this team. And the fact that at times the way they went on that historic run of offensive productivity over 3 games, he's finding different things in them. But to be able then to have to, as you say, and you describe that so well, Ben, professionally finish that game, not allow the emotion of the moment let it get away from you like the Wolves almost did against the Spurs. That's hopeful, but now fingers crossed on OG and too often injured player that he is, because he has been playing the best, most impactful basketball of his career.
Yeah, I have him on that first team all playoffs too. You know,
Yeah,
I think and Brunson's been great, especially here recently. But I thought OG was their best player against the Hawks, and just a really tough matchup for them. Towns has been stepping forward. Everything's clicking for them offensively. I think they're feeling pretty good. And I would now probably put them as the new favorites to come out of the Eastern Conference. And I do think sometimes, you know, the idea, if it's OKC versus New York, you don't want to look too far ahead, right? But it's like massive mega market versus the little, you know, the little market, you know, the little town on the prairie. I mean, they used to always do the Knicks versus Hicks thing with, you know, the Pacers and that rivalry. Maybe that gets brought back up somehow. I'm not sure. But regardless, it would just be a fascinating contrast, right? Where like the Knicks kind of build their team through trading for Towns and signing, you know, poaching Jalen Brunson and trading for Anunoby, and the Thunder are more a draft-oriented team. And, you know, Sam Presti has been there forever. And then, you know, they bring in Leon Rose, this hotshot agent, to run things. And, you know, James Dolan's always making headlines, and the Thunder owner never even wants to accept the trophy. He just wants to hide in the background. It'd just be a very, very interesting finals matchup. I don't even know if either team's going to make it, but if they did, you know, I think it would be a real study in contrast. 2 different ways to build a winner in the NBA.
So true. So true. I love the idea of that matchup, but I think San Antonio might have something to say about it. And again, I'm projecting ahead here as well. And so one final NBA question. Jaylen Brown has been the source of controversy with, you know, some pretty, right term isn't shocking, but kind of odd criticism of the officials and conspiracy theory type of criticism. But the comment that really, I think, has stuck out to a lot of people is how this is the favorite season of his career, i.e., I was the guy. Yeah. So what do you think? Is that a signal that Jaylen wants his own team and that Brad and the Celtics should start thinking, you know what, maybe we have to look at the future without Jaylen Brown and see what we can get for this star player?
Well, first of all, on the officiating front, you know, he had called it sort of like an agenda, you know, where he was feeling like he was being targeted for using his off arm as a push off and getting called for the offensive foul. And he's saying, why are they doing this to me? Every star does this play. Right. You know, I would say coming into playoff series or, you know, playoff games or even the regular season, the idea of an agenda, it's not necessarily wrong. They have what's called points of emphasis, where the referees are trained to look for particular infractions. And if you see them, you've got to call them, right? Because this is something that the league office or the owners and the competition committee, everybody has just determined is in the better interest of the game. So is there a scenario where they had a point of emphasis and said, hey, watch those off-arm shoves because it's not fair to the defense and you got to call them? It's plausible. And I don't think it's a conspiracy theory out of nowhere from him. But the very best players, the guys who can carry championship teams, right? And he should be one of those because he's won a finals MVP in the past. They learn to adjust to the officiating, right? It's not, you're never going to complain your way to the way you want it to be. You've got to adjust and make different moves. And I think, unfortunately for him, he just is kind of a rudimentary ball handler and an attacker. And he's a physical player. He can score in a lot of different ways. But I wouldn't say he has the greatest dribble package I've ever seen. And so he was getting frustrated because he was getting called for the same thing. But he was doing the same thing wrong over and over and over. So, of course, they're going to call it. You know, it's like there's a root cause here, and you can find it by looking in the mirror. You know, it's not complicated. And so that's how I would say that, just to defend the officials and this idea of, hey, agendas. It's not a conspiracy. It's the idea of, like, you know, they're going to hold the line on certain things they have for years and years and years. and they're very transparent about it. I've sat in Zoom calls with the heads of officiating who say, these are the kinds of plays, whether it's sliding under a shooter with your feet or, whether it's a shooter stopping short and jumping into a defensive player to get the call, that they're trying to remove from the game. And so if they see it, they're going to call it. And so that was just that point on the officiating. In terms of
I'm just going to inject in here. Then the devil's advocate is going to say, well, then why don't they call it on SGA?
Right.
Because he does the same thing. And, like missing a couple of the goaltends, and I don't agree with Finch that 8 of the 12 were goaltends, but 2 to 3 were. I mean, they were off glass, and it seemed like the officials were caught up in the moment. Hopefully, I'm sure they've had conversations since then. But the one thing I would say about SGA is I am surprised at the number of times that they don't call the forearm shiver that he uses, because it does come out. And maybe it's just the angle. I don't look at it as a conspiracy theory item at all. Yeah. But for whatever reason, some players in real time are just far, far better. And I think a big part of that point that you made about rudimentary handle that Brown has, Shea has a much more sophisticated handle. And it's a much tighter handle, where Brown, a lot of his plays are out in front of him and his forearm contact is way out in front of him, where SGA is more close to the body. So, but there's your double advocate's point. Is there any validity to it?
Oh, of course. I that's sort of what Jaylen Brown is saying, right? I think that not only does Shea have the better handle, I think he's more subtle, and I think he's also more in control. And so some of the times when you're doing the shove and you're kind of wildly driving, it just makes it easier on the officials. Shea, it's like he's a ballerina out there. He's dancing and dancing and dancing, and you're going to miss a lot of stuff. And the other thing, just, the other counter that I think the refs would make, the same ref is not standing in the same spot to make the same call against Shea as the guy who made the call against Jaylen, right? There's a lot of different variables, and the NBA tries to standardize this stuff as much as possible. I mean, they review the tape with the referees just an ungodly amount to try to make sure that it is a fair thing across all the different referees and for every different player. But it's people will point to examples of Shea getting away with it, and I'm sure if you go back to the tape, you'll find examples of Jaylen getting away with it, right? And so I do think that Shea gets a pretty good whistle as far as Stars are concerned. I don't think it's as big of a crime against the sport as a lot of people on social media like to scream that it is, But I think if they were to just start calling it every time, Shea would adjust within 6 minutes of gameplay. He would not do it again, And it's the same thing. People say, oh, he flops, he sells calls. Well, if he wasn't going to get the calls, he's not going to try to do it again, because that would be a fool's errand and he'd be costing his team, right? And certainly Shea will not be going on Twitch to argue about it and get fined 3 days later. It's just never going to happen. And so I do think one of the things that everybody could take from the Thunder, and we didn't mention this about that Lakers game the other night, the Lakers are huddled around the referee, pleading their case at the end of the buzzer. 9 Lakers guys standing around these referees. Referees are, they're going to just view that in general as a sign of disrespect or a lack of respect. And maybe there was respectful communication going on in that. But the idea that it's going to become this huge story, oh, the referees are against us, in the long run, that's going to work against you. What did Mark Daigneault say after the game? He said, well, I had some issues with the referees during game 2 as well, but that's going to stay between me and them on the court. I'm not going to make a big deal about it. And if you handle things that way, I think you're better off in the long run. I understand Stars are going to work the officials because they want the calls. And going back to Michael Jordan's day, they would always say, oh, he's got the refs in his back pocket, and there's an art to it. But I think the more you complain, the more harm you do to yourself.
Great points. And Jordan was really good at the way he worked the officials, because he didn't talk to them much, but I'm sure what he said was very impactful. And he did get some calls. Just ask Brian Russell whether he got any calls or not. But and by the way, do people get upset on social media about things, Ben? I didn't
every once in a while. Yeah.
Every once in a while.
Yeah. I'm here to break the news to you.
So Jaylen Brown, will he be in Boston next year?
I think so, but it was an interesting comment about this being his most fun season because they had such a great season winning the championship just a couple years ago. He kind of walked things back. Brad kind of cleaned it up, so it doesn't feel like it's necessarily imminent. But I think Boston faces some real questions in terms of how do you retool around Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum, given that their entire front line got exposed in the playoffs. And a lot of their supporting cast guys like Derek White maybe is starting to get a little bit older, wasn't quite as effective. And Peyton Pritchard's just small. And so he can be a very helpful piece, but he's not going to be a part of your core championship piece. And so is there a scenario where the best path for Boston to win another title is to trade Jaylen Brown? I would say yes. And I see people floating like Jaylen Brown and Giannis trade scenarios. Makes a lot of sense to me. That's the kind of trade, if I'm Boston, where it's like, yeah, that kind of raises my ceiling. It helps fill my front court need. We still have star power. Let's try it out. Maybe Jaylen can go somewhere else. I've seen Atlanta thrown out there and have his own team, and because he's from Georgia, that might make sense for him as well. I'm not sure, but I do think, even though it's not maybe imminent, he kind of put everything on the clock here with these comments, right? It's like, hey, we're starting to plant some seeds here, so put out some breadcrumbs, and maybe it's going to wind up being a divorce in a year or two.
Well, it was definitely Jaylen's moment. He certainly became much more outspoken than I've ever seen him before. But I have to admit, I kind of enjoyed it, to be honest, because he was griping in a way that cost him a lot of money, but to us, normal folk, that seems like a lot of money. But on the other hand, he was just speaking out of what he perceived to be the situation. And then this other comment, maybe it was offhanded, maybe it was a signal, but it certainly adds to the flavor of the off season. Ben, thank you so much for today. This has been so much fun as always, and it's going to be a great weekend and a great week of playoff basketball. I hope when we can talk again, if we can talk again next week, we're going to have some series that'll be settled. And we're going to have a real clear look on what's going to be happening for the conference finals. So exciting days ahead in the NBA.
Oh, I share the hope. It's a great time of year. We're getting closer and closer to that Larry O'Brien trophy. You can almost taste it. So I look forward to chatting.
Thanks so much to Ben Golliver for joining me here on Hoop City with Paul Sir on the Deep Dive.
Edmonton's go-to station for all things sports is Sports 1440.
From Low Tide to Kevin Karius and Jason Greger, we deliver the latest on your favorite teams.
Tune in 24 hours a day, 7 days a week
to Sports 1440.
The weather doesn't care about your shift or your schedule. Carhartt Rain Defender sweatshirts let you battle back against the ever-changing elements. Carhartt's durable, water-repellent technology lets light rain beat up and roll right off. Layer up and stay on the job longer without getting drenched. Get your Carhartt Rain Defender sweatshirts at all 3 of our Edmonton job site workwear locations.
Job site workwear, tough different jobs.
Saturday mornings live on Sports 1440. Powered by Subaru. Confidence in motion. Visit Subaru.ca.
I'm Dr. Vance Elliott. The goal of every one of the thousands of hair restoration procedures I've performed is a full, natural-looking head of hair. I work directly with my patients for the consultation, the procedure, and the follow-up, so we can achieve the best results possible. When people see what we accomplish, I don't want them to think, "Wow, great hair transplant." I want them to think,
"Wow, great hair."
Go to drvanceelliott.com and contact us today.
At Metal Supermarkets, they're all about value added. In addition to a warehouse bursting with steel, aluminum, all the good stuff, and cut fast, they offer a ton of value-added services: metal bending, drilling, punching, notching, welding, and back hair waxing. Oh, sorry, I meant plasma cutting. Anybody seen my glasses? Metal Supermarkets, the convenience stores for... And value-added options, too, even delivery. Southside, West End, metalsupermarkets.com.
This is Hoop City with Paul Sir on Sports 1440.
They do have a timeout. Decide not to use it. Curry, way downtown. Bang! Bang! Oh, what a shot from Curry! We did it!
Here's your host, Paul Sir.
Welcome back to Hoop City. How can you beat Earth, Wind, and Fire, Josh? I mean, that we just went through 5 songs, and they're all just fantastic.
It really doesn't get much better than September, however. That's like the most famous graduation song of all time.
Absolutely.
Next to Pomp and Circumstance. So
And I'll take September any day of the week. I remember the first time I heard Earth, Wind, and Fire. I was living off campus when I was going to Winona State University, and one of my teammates lived in one of the rooms upstairs. And his name was Jerry Williams, and he was from El Paso, Texas. And Jerry was this really good-looking guy, and the first person that would tell you that would be Jerry. He loved his nickname called the Stroker, and he was a character. But he said, Paul, you got to come upstairs. You got to hear this. And he played Shining Star by Earth, Wind, and Fire. And he had a very, very good stereo setup. And I thought, man, oh, man, it's one of those times. It's like the first time you hear something and you know it's groundbreaking. And I thought, this is something special. And then, of course, Earth, Wind, and Fire went on not just to have a great musical run themselves, but also to influence so much of the funk, soul, Motown musical genre. And the music all these years later, 50 years later, still stands up so well. So Earth, Wind, and Fire, anytime you get a chance in September, that's really top of the food chain. Lots going on in basketball this weekend. Game going on right now. You can flip it on. You see Dallas playing Indiana in the WNBA. We talked about that earlier. Caitlin Clark against Paige Beckers. They're going toe-to-toe, very close game. As the season opens, we have the Toronto Tempo losing last night to Washington, but a great start. The Tempo have put together a nice-looking team. Their coach is very, very good. So I think we're in for great WNBA basketball throughout the season in Canada and across the league. We also, though, have two great matchups today as well. Detroit up 2-0 in the series over the Cleveland Cavaliers. Go to Cleveland. And Josh, if Cleveland plays in the similar way to how they played against the Raptors, they're going to be a much better team at home because they won all 4 of their games against the Raptors. But this is the Detroit Pistons, not the Toronto Raptors. What's your feeling on this game this afternoon?
Yeah. I really don't like what I've seen from Cleveland this series. I don't like what I've seen from their guards, specifically James Harden. I mean, Donovan Mitchell has not been good either, but James Harden is more games with turnovers than made field goals.
Dreadful.
This postseason. So that's not good. What I really want to see from the Cavs, though, is something that really helped them against the Raptors, which was their bigs really getting into the game. Because I love Jalen Duren, but I think Evan Mobley has like 4 inches on him. So use that height to your advantage a little bit. Same with Jared Allen, who was like the absolute MVP of that Game 7 against the Raptors as well. Created like 4 possessions by himself. So their bigs really need to get involved in the game. And they need to really focus their whole team defense on stopping Cade Cunningham.
You know, it's interesting you say that because I agree with you about the bigs getting involved, but that also, the domino effect comes down to the guards have to be better in order to get the bigs involved because the bigs are dependent on the guards to get the ball in scoring positions. Mobley has a little bit more versatility to his game, but he's still not what you would call an upper echelon scorer in terms of being able to create his own shot. He's better than he has ever been as the reigning defensive player of the year until Wembanyama recently was unanimously picked as the defensive player of the year this year. So Mobley has to do more individually, but ultimately Harden at his age, and Ben Golliver and I talked about that. I mean, the guy's 37 years old and he's not LeBron James physically. So he's not able to keep Father Time at bay the way LeBron has been. And he's still a very good player, but he takes way too many chances dribbling into traffic, looking to bait the defender into a foul, and he just hasn't been successful against a very good defensive team in Detroit. To your point about Cade Cunningham, the thing I like about Cunningham is, yes, if you focus on him and you're running 2 players at him, he will get rid of the ball, and then you can see whether other players on Detroit are capable of taking the game over and making more plays. It will be interesting to see how Cleveland adjusts to try to take some of Cunningham's magnificent game, and he's such a smart player. He lets the game come to him, so it's going to be interesting to see how those 2 forces collide and who's going to be able to come out on top.
Yep.
Now, here's my question in terms of prediction, though. Do you think Cleveland can take one today?
No. Honestly, I've got a pretty strong sense that basically all of these series, except for the Timberwolves one, is over. I think the die is cast. If anything, I think it'll be a poor showing from Cleveland this afternoon. And then on Monday, they'll actually show up big time.
Okay. I'm going to go with Cleveland winning today and losing on Monday. But I think, you make a valid point. It's one of the things that's always interesting about when you get into the playoffs is what translates from one game, i.e., let's just use the Timberwolves as an example in that horrific Game 2 effort where they didn't even show up with any kind of serious intent to compete, to a much better Game 3. And now the pressure's on for them to have to be able to up their game into Game 4 to keep this series from getting completely out of hand with San Antonio. I'm going to go with Cleveland. The other NBA game today are the having the OKC Thunder for the second game in Los Angeles. What's your pick today? Is this just going to be a Thunder? Is this just a fait accompli? Maybe more so than any of the other series, that this is Game 4. It's going to be over. LA head to the golf course after today.
Give me the brooms. Give me the brooms.
Absolutely. Start getting your crew assembled to take the floor apart.
Exactly. And I think Lakers fans have the same feeling. I'm just sitting here on ESPN currently, and if you look at the schedule, it will give you ticket prices as low as the lowest ticket price you can find currently for the Lakers game is $23.
Is that right?
Per ESPN.
Oh my goodness. So you can go to a Lakers game today for $23.
Yeah, it's probably standing room only, obviously, but like,
well, maybe not.
It's still like, this is the Lakers we're talking about here.
Yeah, but you're also talking about LA fans. And they're a fickle group.
So what the hell, Los Angeles?
So you're saying the Stars aren't going to be coming out today?
I guess so. They might be sitting courtside, but maybe the Stars are more enthralled with New York and the Knicks right now.
Oh, for sure. You're going to see everybody sitting courtside for the Knicks game. They're definitely one of the darlings. So, okay, so you're going with OKC.
Give me OKC.
Yeah, same here. I mean, I think, in our conversation with Ben, like talking about the OKC hasn't had the best out of Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. Is sort of just a different look for Shai because he's been invincible literally all season long. To be a little bit less than perfect because his game is as close to perfection in the regular season as anybody has been probably since Michael Jordan was in the league. So I think it's pretty safe to say LA, I think they've tried really hard. They don't have the talent. Without Luka around, they'd be hard-pressed to win one or two with Luka around, I think, against this very, very good and very, very deep Thunder team. So I think we're both in agreement that this is going to be the first sweep that we're going to see and the first series that will be ending for the NBA season. So I just got a text from our good friend Joey Slattery out of Winnipeg. Joey, of course, does a tremendous job in a variety of media capacities out in Winnipeg. He also does play-by-play for the Winnipeg Sea Bears. He's listening to the show today, and he just sent me a text saying that Xavier Moon is out. He's entering the semifinal with his Russian team in Zenit in Russia, and he probably won't be here until mid to late June. Isaiah Osborne, who's played for the Stingers, is also out. And Teddy Allen, who scores a lot of points but gets a lot of criticism for being a volume player, seems to have been much more of a team guy coming into training camp. So we're going to see, is this a new Teddy Allen today when he takes the court against the Edmonton Stingers? Or are we going to see Teddy who can take a game over? And by the way, I say that with Teddy, not necessarily all in a derogatory way at all, because Teddy Allen is one of the great scorers that we've ever had in the CEBL. And whenever he's on the court, he's a danger because he can really fill it up quickly. But it makes for great drama as the two teams take the court without some of their stars, without some of their players. But we know that's the deal in the CEBL. I'm going to wrap up today by just a couple of things just to take care of business. You can listen to the entire show on our podcast after the show is over. Also, we're going to break out today our interviews and segments with Pat Boylan And you can also listen to the deep dive in its entirety in my conversation with Ben Golliver. So you can go on YouTube or you can go on Spotify or whichever podcast provider of your choice and listen to the show again if you weren't able to keep it, or if you weren't able to fit it into your schedule so far today. Also, I do put out a 3-in-1 blog every week. I think there's some pretty good content in that. And if you want that in your email, please text the show and we'll get it out to you next week. I think we're on volume 21 of that. We get to the final part of the show today, and I want to take a moment because May is the mental health month, as we know. And the NBA, WNBA, most sports organizations spend a great amount of time talking about mental health. And they also, and I hear this more and more often by media personalities about being kind to one another. And every week, for anyone who listens to our show, knows that at this part of the show, I talk about my son, Ben, who passed away 3 years ago. And Ben battled mental health and addiction issues. And Ben suffered terribly. But also, one of the things that Ben is remembered for is how kind he was to his fellow human beings. And people that were in the toughest spots in life, Ben was the kindest too. And I want to encourage you to think the best of other people at all times. We don't know what folks are going through in their personal lives. And sometimes when they're acting out and they're having a really difficult time in life, that's the time to be the kindest to them. You can never be too kind. And also a reminder to everybody, for those that are in your life that you love, that mean a lot to you, make sure you tell them that, because our journey here is short. And the people that are special, that make life worthwhile, that make life rich, you got to let them know. And kindness always comes back. It always comes around. So think the best of each other. Be kind to each other. Josh, fantastic show today. Fantastic job. Thank you so much.
Always happy to do it, Paul. Looking forward to the next time we get to do it together in 2 weeks.
100%. You're off next week.
Yeah.
Chasing around the province of Alberta, but we'll be back with you next weekend on Hoop City with Paul Sir. Thanks so much for spending your time with us today. As I mentioned, you can listen to our podcast if you want on your podcast provider. In the meanwhile, have a great weekend on and off the court. Enjoy hoops action. Enjoy the spring weather. Thanks so much for spending your time here on Hoop City with Paul Sir, Josh Fenwick, on your sports leader, Sports 1440.
Want sports talk on the go?
You can listen to 1440 on the AM dial or stream us on your mobile device through apps like Radio Play.